The wind, a mournful whisper through the ancient pines, carried with it the chill of autumn and a deeper, more profound cold. 39 years. That's how long the silence had stretched, a gaping void where laughter and future plans once resided. Now, in the summer of 2025, amidst the rugged beauty of Mount Rainier, an impossible discovery shattered decades of quiet despair. A team of hikers, their boots crunching on the same earth that had swallowed Sarah Jenkins and David Miller whole, stumbled upon a hidden crevice. Inside, buried deep, lay a small, weathered metal box. When opened, it revealed not just forgotten trinkets, but the tangible ghosts of a life tragically cut short. Sarah's locket, a silver heart holding a faded image of her and David, a small, leather-bound journal filled with her meticulous script, and David's wallet, a stark reminder of the man he was. The pristine preservation of these items, shielded from the elements within their earthen tomb, was a testament to a deliberate act, a carefully constructed erasure. This was no accident. This was a meticulously planned vanishing, its horrors finally beginning to surface from the unforgiving earth. Sarah Jenkins, 24, and David Miller, 27, were not casual adventurers. They were professionals, planners, deeply in love and on the cusp of building their life together. Sarah, a biologist with an eye for detail, meticulously documented their excursions, her sketches and notes a testament to her fascination with the natural world. David, a rising architect, was the steady hand, the pragmatist, ensuring every detail was accounted for. They were experienced hikers, familiar with the vast expanse of Mount Rainier National Park, their routine of informing family before and after trips a comforting, predictable rhythm. Yet, on October 4, 1986, that rhythm shattered. They set out on a bright Saturday morning, intending a scenic hike on the Skyline Trail, with a planned detour down a less traveled spur. They were never seen again. The sheer improbability of two prepared, experienced individuals vanishing from a trail, leaving behind only a single boot miles from any apparent hazard, defied all rational explanation. The vastness of the park, the unpredictable mountain weather, and the passage of time had conspired to bury their story under layers of speculation and unanswered questions, leaving families to grapple with the ghosts of what might have been. But the silence that had enveloped Sarah and David for nearly 4 decades was not an eternal one. The discovery of the metal box, and more importantly, its contents, cracked open the meticulously sealed vault of their disappearance. Sarah's journal, its ink faded but legible, painted a chillingly different picture than the one initially accepted. These weren't the musings of a happy couple on a nature walk. They were the frantic scribblings of 2 people on the run. Entries spoke of being followed, of a palpable sense of dread, and a desperate attempt to evade an unseen threat. Their planned detour was not for adventure, but for survival. The final, hurried entry detailed their fear of being cornered, their desperate attempt to reach a remote shelter. This wasn't a story of a tragic accident, it was a narrative of evasion, pursuit, and likely, violent intervention. The forensic analysis of the journal, the locket, and the wallet would soon reveal a truth far more sinister than anyone had dared to imagine, hinting at a darkness lurking in the very wilderness they sought to embrace. Sarah and David were more than just names on a missing persons report. Sarah, the bright biologist, was the anchor for her younger sister, Emily, who relied on her for guidance and comfort, especially after their parents' early death. David, the aspiring architect, held dreams of a future, of a home, a life he was meticulously building with Sarah. Their love was a quiet certainty, a shared future painted with hues of nature and peace. The disappearance of both of them at once wasn't just a tragedy, it was a double blow, a catastrophic event that fractured 2 families, leaving them adrift in a sea of grief and unanswered questions. Emily Jenkins, clinging to the hope of finding her sister, became the tireless advocate, the living embodiment of their enduring pain. The initial searches, the discovery of David's scattered boot, these were desperate attempts to grasp at any shred of understanding, but they yielded only more questions. The vastness of the park became a cruel metaphor for the emptiness left behind, each unyielding acre a constant reminder of what was lost, and the agonizing void of never knowing why. This wasn't just about 2 vanished hikers, it was about 2 stolen futures, 2 broken families, and a wound that time had failed to heal. And now, after 39 long years, the truth is finally beginning to surface. The FBI's involvement, spurred by the discovery of tangible evidence of a struggle and evasion, has peeled back the layers of speculation. They've unearthed not just the personal effects of Sarah and David, but the chilling implication of their final moments. Sarah's journal entries, combined with forensic analysis of the recovered items, point not to a natural disaster, but to predatory human forces. The precise nature of the threat, the identity of those who pursued them, and the horrifying conclusion to their desperate flight are secrets buried for decades, secrets that the FBI is now determined to bring to light. This isn't just another cold case, it's a chronicle of courage, fear, and a devastating encounter with a hidden underworld. Were these 2 lives simply lost, or were they silenced? Join us as we delve deeper into this chilling mystery, uncovering the evidence that spent 39 years waiting to be found, revealing a story more horrific than any theory could have captured. What really happened to Sarah and David that autumn day on the mountain? And how many other stories like theirs have been buried by time and the unforgiving wilderness? If you're finding this story as compelling and disturbing as we are, let us know where you're watching from in the comments below. This is a story that needs to be heard, a truth that demands to be told. Hey, if you're as invested in uncovering the truth behind Sarah and David's story as we are, make sure to hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you don't miss a single detail. Your engagement fuels our investigation into these forgotten mysteries. Sarah Jenkins, 24, possessed a vibrant energy that seemed to pull the world into her orbit. Her smile, quick and genuine, often crinkled the corners of her eyes that held the keen, observant sparkle of a scientist. She was slender, with a cascade of auburn hair that she usually tied back with a practical bandana when she was in the field, which was often. Even off the trail, her movements held a certain grace, a reflection of her deep connection to the natural world she studied. David Miller, 27, was her steady counterpart. Taller than Sarah, with a quiet strength about him, he had a thoughtful gaze, his dark hair neatly kept, often paired with a subtle smile that spoke of inner contentment. He moved with the grounded presence of someone who understood structure and intent, the architect's eye evident in his careful observation of his surroundings. Their shared passion for the wild had brought them together, but it was their interwoven lives, their predictable rhythms and shared dreams that made their vanishing so utterly incomprehensible. Their days were a testament to their meticulous planning and deep affection. Sarah's mornings began before dawn, a quiet ritual of strong coffee and sketching in her worn leather journal, her detailed observations of plant life and bird migratory patterns filling its pages. David, often already awake, would be poring over architectural blueprints, his brow furrowed in concentration before he joined her for a shared breakfast. They often spoke of their future home, a modest cabin surrounded by trees, a sanctuary they were diligently saving for. Their evenings were a comforting blend of shared meals, poring over maps for their next excursion, or quiet evenings with Emily, Sarah's younger sister, on the phone, Sarah's voice a soothing balm against Emily's anxieties. David's parents, equally fond of Sarah, would often dinner with them on Sundays, the conversation flowing easily between their professional aspirations and the simple joy of their shared life. They were a portrait of contented stability, their routines a predictable symphony of shared affection and purposeful living. Sarah's defining trait was an insatiable curiosity, a biological imperative to understand the why of things. She approached the world with an unbridled enthusiasm, a gentle empathy that extended to every living creature. Her sister, Emily, often said Sarah's kindness was like sunshine, you just naturally felt warmer around her. David, while quieter, possessed a deep well of resilience and a steadfast loyalty. He was the kind of man who would instinctively step in front of a metaphorical storm for those he loved, his pragmatism tempered by profound thoughtfulness. Their shared values were rooted in honesty, hard work, and a deep respect for nature. They lived by a moral compass that pointed towards integrity and would never shirk from a commitment, whether to their careers, their families, or each other. Their friends often spoke of their quiet strength and their ability to find joy in the simplest of moments. Their future was meticulously mapped out. For Sarah, it involved furthering her research, perhaps establishing a conservation program for endangered alpine flora. She spoke often of wanting to mentor young biologists, sharing her passion and knowledge. David's dreams were concrete, the cabin, a family started with Sarah, and establishing his own architectural firm, one that prioritized sustainable design. He was already sketching preliminary designs for their future home, a testament more tangible than words to his commitment. Beyond their personal aspirations, they felt a growing responsibility for their families. Sarah was the sole pillar of support for Emily after their parents' early deaths, and David devoted significant time to his aging parents, ensuring they felt loved and secure. These commitments, these deeply ingrained senses of duty and love, were threads of steel woven into the fabric of their lives. The enigma of Sarah and David's disappearance lies precisely in this profound sense of rootedness. They were not drifters, not souls seeking escape. Sarah's journal was a chronicle of observation, meticulously documenting flora, fauna, and geological formations, not a diary of discontent. David's future was not a hazy concept but a meticulously planned construction, from house blueprints to savings goals. Their shared life was a vibrant tapestry, woven with shared experiences, future plans, and the unwavering presence of loved ones. They were deeply embedded in their social and family circles. Their disappearance would have been a catastrophic tear in the fabric of so many lives. There were no whispers of despair, no hidden anxieties, no precursor to flight or abandonment. They were simply there, and then they were not. Knowing them, understanding their core values and their unbreakable bonds, makes their silent departure from the very earth they loved an absolute impossibility. The air in Buckley, Washington, in the autumn of 1986 was crisp with the scent of pine and damp earth, a familiar perfume for inhabitants of the foothills that cradled Mount Rainier. Sarah Jenkins and David Miller, like many couples of their generation, found solace in a shared future etched into the grand, imposing landscape of the Cascade Mountains. Their lives, though distinct in their professional paths, were deeply intertwined by their shared love for the wild, a connection forged and nurtured in places like this. Buckley and the surrounding communities served as a gateway to the rugged beauty of the park, a place of weekend escapes and aspirational dreams of a quieter, nature-infused existence. The small towns offered a sense of comfortable anonymity, a stark contrast to the burgeoning cities, yet close enough to access amenities and connect with the wider world. It was a region where the rhythm of life was dictated by the seasons and the imposing presence of the mountain, a colossal, sleeping giant that both sustained and threatened with its unpredictable moods. The early 1980s were a time of burgeoning outdoor recreation, a cultural shift towards appreciating nature's raw beauty, fueled by a growing awareness of environmental issues and a desire for experiences beyond the increasingly digitized urban sprawl. For Sarah, the biologist, this era was a time of scientific advancement, where her meticulous studies of flora and fauna felt both personally fulfilling and internationally relevant. David, the architect with a visionary eye for sustainable design, saw the Pacific Northwest as a canvas for building a future that harmonized with the environment. The social fabric of these communities was tight-knit. Neighbors knew each other's routines, local businesses were gathering spots, and a shared understanding of the land fostered a sense of cooperative vigilance. Mobile phones were a rare luxury, and GPS devices were nascent technology, meaning communication relied on landlines, pre-arranged check-ins, and word of mouth. The sense of security, while generally high, was rooted in a simpler era's trust in established routines and familiar faces. In communities like Buckley, life revolved around shared experiences and local institutions. The general store was more than a place to buy provisions, it was a news hub where gossip and information were exchanged. The local diner served as a regular meeting point for hikers and park regulars where trail conditions and weather forecasts were discussed over steaming cups of coffee. Sarah and David, on their fateful outing, would have been seen as quintessential young professionals, fully integrated into this milieu of outdoor enthusiasts, their reliable car parked at the trailhead, their planned route known to local authorities and friends. Their connection to the park wasn't merely recreational, it was deeply personal, a place where their shared future was being mapped out, brick by virtual brick, plan by calculated plan. They were part of the seasonal ebb and flow of visitors, expected to return, their absence noted with a quiet concern that would soon erupt into widespread alarm. However, beneath the veneer of idyllic natural beauty and established community trust lay inherent vulnerabilities. The very vastness that drew people to Mount Rainier also served as a shroud for clandestine activities. The less traveled trails, the dense old-growth forests, and the often unpredictable mountain weather created pockets of isolation where the law's reach was tenuous. In the 1980s, illegal hunting operations, often employing extreme brutality to protect their illicit gains, were a known, albeit often unacknowledged, threat in remote wilderness areas. The allure of profit from poaching, coupled with the difficulty of surveillance in expansive parks, made these regions potential havens for criminal elements. The pristine wilderness, so cherished by Sarah and David, could as easily be a sanctuary for danger as it was for serenity, a place where a wrong turn could lead not just to getting lost, but to an encounter with the darker side of human nature, shielded by miles of unforgiving terrain and decades of silence. The routine that Sarah and David meticulously followed was a hallmark of their character. Experienced, prepared, and deeply in love, they represented the ideal adventurers seeking communion with nature. They would have meticulously packed their gear, checked their maps, and shared a final, hopeful meal before setting off. Their planned route, a spur trail deviating from the main Skyline Trail, was chosen for its challenge and promised vistas, a testament to their shared ambition and thirst for exploration. The very predictability of their habits, their earnest intent to inform family of their whereabouts, created a stark irony. They were setting out on a day that, in their minds, was an extension of their love story, a building block for their shared future. The serene, sun-dappled trails of Mount Rainier National Park, a place they trusted and adored, were about to become the stage for a chilling interruption, where the familiar comfort of the wilderness would transform into a silent, unforgiving witness to their ultimate fate. The crisp mountain air of October 4th, 1986, tasted of pine needles and impending frost. Sarah Jenkins' alarm chirped precisely at 6:23 a.m. Sunlight, still tentative, filtered through the lodge window, illuminating dust motes dancing in the still air. She stretched, a quiet groan escaping her lips, her auburn hair splayed on the pillow. Beside her, David Miller stirred, a low rumble in his chest. "Morning," he murmured, his voice thick with sleep, reaching for her. Their shared room was filled with the quiet hum of anticipation, the everyday symphony of two lives intertwined. Sarah's first action was to pull on her worn corduroys and the flannel shirt she favored for hikes. She padded to the small dresser, her movements economical and familiar. David, ever the early riser even now, was already by the window, gazing out at the imposing silhouette of Mount Rainier, a subtle smile playing on his lips. The air was still, promising a clear day, a perfect counterpoint to the vibrant golds and reds of the autumn foliage. Nothing in this quiet dawn hinted at the encroaching darkness, the way their predictable orbit was about to shatter. By 7:05 a.m., the scent of strong coffee filled their small lodge room. Sarah sat at the warm wooden table, her leather journal open, a fresh page waiting for her meticulous observations. She sipped her coffee, her brow furrowed slightly as she sketched a particularly interesting information she noticed on their drive in. David, already dressed in his sturdy hiking boots and layers of practical outdoor gear, meticulously checked their day pack. Water bottles filled, energy bars packed, first aid kit secured. At 7:40 a.m., Sarah called her sister Emily. "Hey, Em, just wanted to say we're heading out for the Skyline Trail today. Planning a little detour down that spur trail Ranger Thompson mentioned yesterday. Sounds gorgeous." Her voice was light, filled with the easy affection that defined their bond. "Don't forget to check back with Mom and Dad later, okay?" Emily's voice, a comforting presence, crackled over the line, offering well wishes and a reminder to be careful. David, overhearing, gave Sarah a reassuring nod, adding a cheerful, "We'll see you Sunday for brunch, Em. Save me some of that apple pie." Their last meal together, a simple breakfast of scrambled eggs and toast at the lodge's dining area, was punctuated by shared jokes and plans for their next adventure. They chose their clothes with practical intent, Sarah opting for her trusted hiking boots and a warm fleece, David for his durable trekking trousers and a windbreaker. The worn locket was already around Sarah's neck, its silver heart hidden beneath her shirt. At 8:55 a.m., they were ready to depart. They waved goodbye to the lodge manager, Mr. Henderson, who offered a routine, "Have a wonderful hike. Trail's clear this morning." Their sturdy blue sedan was parked at the trailhead lot, a silent testament to their careful planning. Ranger Thompson, on his morning patrol, spotted them at 9:15 a.m. near the main trailhead kiosk, checking their map. He recalled Sarah's excited description of the spur trail's potential vistas and David's steady, reassuring presence. They looked prepared, happy, just like any other enthusiastic hikers, Thompson would later recount. Not a worry in the world. By 10:30 a.m., they were well onto the Skyline Trail, the air alive with birdsong and a rustle of leaves underfoot. Sarah's journal entries from this period, later recovered, spoke of the vibrant colors of the forest, the crisp air, and the joy of shared exploration. David's hand was often in hers as they navigated the path. They even stopped briefly at 11:47 a.m. to take a photograph of a particularly stunning viewpoint, a shared moment frozen in time on a roll of Kodak film that would never be developed. Sarah made a small notation in her journal at 12:12 p.m., decided to take the detour now. "Looks challenging but worth it." This entry marked the moment their familiar path veered into the unknown. Their last confirmed visual contact was at 1:10 p.m. Ranger Thompson, circling back on a different section of the perimeter, saw them briefly at the entrance to the spur trail. They were together, moving with confident strides, the sunlight dappling through the dense canopy as they disappeared down the less traveled path. Sarah, a flash of her auburn hair, turned briefly as if to take in the scenery, and David gave a small, almost imperceptible wave in Thompson's general direction. He noted their appearance, Sarah in her practical hiking attire, David with his familiar sturdy frame. They were heading deeper into the wilderness, their voices likely carrying on the wind, their shared laughter a sound that would soon become a haunting echo. Everything appeared utterly, perfectly normal. They were two people en route to a beautiful vista, exactly as planned, a familiar scene playing out against the breathtaking backdrop of Mount Rainier. The expected time of the return was late afternoon, aiming for a 5:00 p.m. arrival back at the lodge. By 6:00 p.m., uncertainty began to creep into the lodge manager's mind. Mr. Henderson made a few calls, checking if they'd perhaps stopped at another establishment. By 7:30 p.m., the first flicker of real concern, a cold dread, began to settle. When they were at 8:00 p.m., and the lodges was confirmed that no further contact, the notable of with a sharp, jarring visit and that Sarah and David not too late. They were gone. The transition from ordinary Saturday to dawning mystery was complete, leaving a void where their presence had been just hours before. The lingering quiet at the Mount Rainier Lodge on Saturday evening of October 4, 1986, soon began to curdle into a gnawing unease. Mr. Henderson, the lodge manager, noted Sarah Jenkins and David Miller's blue sedan still parked at the trailhead by 6:00 p.m. Initially, it was an amusing detail. Perhaps they decided to linger for sunset photos or enjoyed an extended meal. But as dusk deepened and the lodge's dining room filled with other returning hikers recounting their days, a small seed of worry began to sprout. By 7:30 p.m., after checking no other local establishments had them, Henderson dialed the sheriff's office. "Yes, hello," he began, his voice polite but tinged with nascent concern. "I'm calling about 2 guests who checked in yesterday, Sarah Jenkins and David Miller. They went hiking this morning on the Skyline Trail, mentioned a spur trail detour. Their car is still at the trailhead and they haven't returned to the lodge. It's getting late." The dispatcher's response was routine, practiced. "Sir, have they been gone for more than 24 hours? Adults have the right to come and go, and parks are vast. We can't initiate a search based on a late return." Henderson pressed. They were very specific about their plans, and they're usually prompt. Plus, they're a couple. For both to be missing, it just doesn't feel right. The dispatcher, perhaps hearing the genuine fear in his voice, relented, promising to log the concern and dispatch a deputy to take a preliminary report first thing in the morning. The unease, for now, remained confined to the lodge and a worried park employee. The following morning, Sunday, October 5th, the lodge's initial concern had escalated into full-blown anxiety within the Jenkins and Miller families. Emily Jenkins, Sarah's sister, had called the lodge at 8:00 a.m., a knot tightening in her stomach when she learned they still hadn't returned. She then tried David's parents, who confirmed their assumed quiet Saturday. By mid-morning, a coordinated wave of increasingly frantic calls flooded the park service and the local sheriff's department. Emily, her voice trembling, relayed to Deputy Harding, the responding officer, Sarah and David's detailed hiking plan, their gear, and their established habit of checking in. "My sister, she's so meticulous," Emily pleaded, her words catching in her throat. "And David always made sure they were prepared. They wouldn't just disappear. Please, you have to do something." Harding, a man who had seen his share of anxious relatives, listened patiently, ticking boxes on his report form: last known location, clothing descriptions, vehicle details. He acknowledged their worry, assuring them he'd check it out, implying a cursory review rather than an immediate mobilization. But the sheer number of calls from both families, and the specific details they provided about the couple's responsible nature, nudged his professional instinct from a standard follow-up to a more active preliminary check. Deputy Harding's initial response, spurred by the family's insistent calls, was measured but immediate. By 10:00 a.m. on Sunday, he was en route to the park, his mind already framing potential scenarios. His first step was to visit the trailhead where their blue sedan sat, undisturbed. Finding it exactly as described, he made a note of its presence and the lack of any obvious signs of tampering. He then began collecting preliminary information, statements from the lodge manager and any other hikers who might have seen the couple the previous day. His colleagues at the station, aware of the calls from both families, started assembling a basic timeline based on the information provided. Harding reviewed the park map, identifying the Skyline Trail and the approximate location of the spur trail Sarah had mentioned. His current theories were a spectrum: a simple accident due to the challenging terrain, a voluntary decision to extend their hike and get lost, or the dreaded possibility that raised a cold dread in his gut, something more sinister. The sheer vastness of Mount Rainier National Park, however, loomed large, a daunting factor in any immediate search efforts. The crucial first 48 hours were a blur of escalating fear and frustratingly scant results. By Sunday afternoon, search and rescue teams, alerted by Harding and the insistent Jenkins and Miller families, began a methodical sweep of the main Skyline Trail. They found no sign of Sarah or David. The spur trail, narrower and less maintained, proved more challenging. Volunteer searchers, coordinated under the growing urgency, combed the accessible sections. By Monday morning, over 24 hours after their planned return, the emotional deadline for concern had definitively passed, morphing into full-blown panic. The recovery of a single, mud-caked hiking boot near a treacherous ravine, identified by Emily as David's, sent a fresh wave of terror through the families. Harding's team analyzed the site, finding no other immediate evidence, no struggle, no further remains, no scent trail for the dogs beyond a fleeting indication near the boot. The lack of any other personal effects, combined with the boot's location, led to the initial, grim theory: a catastrophic fall. However, the precision of the boot's placement, deep within a crevice, felt strangely deliberate, a jarring detail that didn't quite fit the narrative of a simple accident. The case, once a missing persons report, was now being treated as a potential fatality. As the initial search efforts concluded Monday evening with no further sign of Sarah or David, the limitations of the sheriff's department became critically apparent. The sheer scale of Mount Rainier National Park, coupled with the limited resources available for such an extensive ground and aerial search in 1986, meant that only a fraction of the area could be thoroughly covered. Harding, facing the family's desperate pleas and the unsettling lack of concrete answers beyond the single boot, recognized the need for broader intelligence and potentially specialized support. The case, initially a localized concern, was rapidly expanding in complexity. The absence of any communication, any trace of their struggle or fate beyond that one item, was deeply frustrating. The park's unforgiving terrain, which Sarah and David had loved, was now a vast, silent enigma that offered no clues, amplifying the family's agony and leaving investigators with only a handful of disquieting questions, hinting at something far more disturbing than a tragic accident. The case was no longer just a missing persons report. It was a deep, unsettling mystery demanding a much larger response. The news of Sarah Jenkins and David Miller's disappearance, amplified by the sheer number of concerned friends and family members, ignited a spontaneous outpouring of community spirit. In Buckley and the surrounding towns, missing person posters, plastered on every lamppost and storefront, became a grim testament to the town's collective dread. A makeshift command center sprang up in the brightly lit gymnasium of the local high school, its usual basketball courts now covered with topographical maps, handwritten notes, and a growing list of volunteers. Sarah's sister, Emily, a force of quiet determination, became the de facto coordinator for the civilian effort, her grief fueling an unwavering resolve. Friends from Sarah's university days, many now experienced outdoors people themselves, converged on the area, forming specialized search groups. Seasoned mountaineers tackling the steeper slopes, experienced divers meticulously combing the edges of alpine lakes, and local cyclists mapping the less accessible logging roads. The coordination between these civilian efforts and the escalating official response was a testament to the shared urgency, a palpable sense that this was a tragedy that had befallen them all, a collective responsibility to bring Sarah and David home. Every available pair of eyes, every ounce of local knowledge about the mountain's unpredictable moods was mobilized. Meanwhile, the official response rapidly transformed from a local deputy's preliminary check into a full-fledged, multi-jurisdictional crisis. The sheriff's department, soon joined by state park rangers and the Washington State Patrol, established a sophisticated incident command post near the park entrance. Helicopters, their rotors beating a guttural rhythm against the crisp autumn air, began systematic grid searches of the vast terrain, their powerful spotlights sweeping the dense forests and rocky outcrops. K-9 units, their handlers working tirelessly, crisscrossed the designated search areas, their noses to the ground, sifting through the scent profiles of pine needles, damp earth, and the faintest trace of human passage. Divers deployed sonar equipment in the park's larger lakes, their teams working in shifts, the cold water a hostile element that seemed to swallow any hope. Advanced digital mapping technology, still nascent in 1986, was being utilized to meticulously chart the search perimeters, ensuring no inch of the vast wilderness went unexamined, creating the impression of a well-coordinated, almost military-style operation against the mountain itself. The first wave of discovered items, initially met with fervent hope, soon devolved into cycles of heart-wrenching disappointment. A torn piece of fabric, snagged on a low-hanging branch several miles off the spur trail, was excitedly identified by Emily as belonging to David's jacket. However, detailed examination revealed it was a common type of outdoor wear, found on countless hikers. Later, a set of footprints, seemingly fresh, leading towards a particularly remote section of the woods, sent a surge of adrenaline through the search teams, only to be definitively identified as belonging to a pair of illicit hunters operating in the area months prior. Conflicting testimonies from transient hikers who claimed to have seen a couple matching Sarah and David's descriptions only added to the confusion. One reported them heading deeper into the wilderness, another insisted they had turned back toward the main trail. Each promising clue, each potential lead, dissolved like mist in the morning sun, leaving behind only a gnawing sense of futility and the resurfacing echo of the empty void. The sheer scale and unforgiving nature of Mount Rainier presented an exponentially complex set of obstacles. The spur trail Sarah and David had taken, even just 30 years prior, was far less maintained than the primary routes, its terrain a treacherous mix of steep inclines, dense undergrowth, and hidden ravines. By the second day of the intensive search, the operational area had expanded to cover hundreds of square miles, an expanse that dwarfed the available resources. The technological limitations of 1986 meant that aerial searches were crucial, but often hampered by dense tree cover and unpredictable weather patterns. Search dogs, while invaluable, struggled to maintain scent trails across varied terrain and against the overwhelming olfactory noise of the wilderness. The logistical challenge of supplying and coordinating hundreds of volunteers and search personnel in remote, challenging conditions began to take its toll, with limited funding and personnel stretching thin across the vast, silent wilderness, a constant reminder that the mountain held its secrets tightly. As the days bled into a week, the initial fervor of community mobilization began to wane, replaced by a quiet, pervasive weariness. The high school gymnasium, once a hub of frantic energy, now felt like a place of subdued desperation, though Emily Jenkins' resolve remained unbroken. Budgetary constraints began to affect the duration of official search operations. Helicopters were grounded to conserve fuel, and the number of dedicated ground searchers was gradually reduced. The constant cycle of hope followed by crushing disappointment had begun to wear down the volunteers, many of whom were now returning to their daily lives, their exhausted faces reflecting the stark reality that extraordinary efforts had yielded no trace. Whispers began to circulate among the remaining search coordinators and officials about the potential need to scale back the operation, about the possibility that Sarah and David had become another tragic statistic, a mystery swallowed whole by the immense, indifferent wilderness. The once vibrant hope of a swift resolution was slowly giving way to the chilling understanding that this was no simple missing persons case. It was a mystery far deeper and far more enduring than anyone had ever imagined. The initial surge of hope, fueled by the discovery of Sarah Jenkins and David Miller's personal effects, began its slow, inevitable descent into the vast, quiet expanse of a cold case. Within months of the 1986 disappearance, the intensive, multi-agency search for Sarah and David yielded no further conclusive evidence. The single boot, Sarah's locket, journal, and David's wallet, found carefully concealed rather than scattered in a tragic accident, pointed towards foul play, but the perpetrators remained shrouded in the unforgiving wilderness. Sheriff's Deputy Harding, his initial investigations hampered by limited resources and the sheer scale of Mount Rainier, saw the case files transferred to the Washington State Cold Case Unit. The dedicated search and rescue teams were scaled back, their efforts no longer supported by immediate funding, and the park's vastness seemed to swallow the active pursuit. Eventually, even the occasional reviews by new investigators yielded little more than a reiteration of the same frustratingly incomplete picture, leaving Sarah and David's story to exist in a limbo state, officially open, but practically dormant, a ghost in the archives. For the Jenkins and Miller families, the passage of years was measured not by milestones, but by the persistent, unyielding ache of absence. Emily Jenkins, Sarah's sister, marked every October 4th with a pilgrimage to Mount Rainier, often accompanied by David's parents. Their gatherings were hushed affairs, a shared ritual of remembrance that evolved from hopeful vigils to somber tributes. While Emily and David's parents clung to different coping mechanisms, Emily's into determined, quiet investigation, theirs into a more withdrawn acceptance. Their shared grief created an unspoken bond. The years stripped away the sharp edges of immediate pain, replacing it with a dull, chronic sorrow that permeated their lives. Sarah's parents, having passed away a decade before her disappearance, left Emily as Sarah's sole family, amplifying the solitary burden of her loss. David's parents, though supportive, found their own lives increasingly defined by the shadow of their lost son, the relationship strained by the constant, unspoken question of what might have been. The absence of answers fragmented their ability to truly heal, forcing them to live suspended in a state of perpetual, unresolved mourning. As the 1990s bled into the 2000s, the internet transformed the way forgotten mysteries captivated the public. Sarah and David's case was resurrected online, sparking a fierce debate across nascent forums dedicated to unsolved disappearances. Amateur armchair detectives meticulously pore over scant details, generating wild theories that range from a meticulously planned escape to a conspiracy involving government entities or clandestine paranormal organizations. Podcasts dedicated to true crime and urban legends featured episodes detailing the scant evidence, often sensationalizing the known facts and inventing elaborate narratives. Emily Jenkins, initially finding some solace in this shared interest, grew increasingly distressed by the respectful distance being eroded by morbid curiosity. The public assassination, while occasionally providing new though often unsubstantiated leads, also felt like a violation of Sarah and David's memory, turning their personal tragedy into a form of exploitative entertainment, a chilling reminder that their lives and deaths had become fodder for public consumption and speculation. Driven by a desperate need for closure, Emily, and on occasion, David's parents, pooled their meager resources to hire private investigators. These often short-lived endeavors, one PI theorized a cult abduction, another a mob hit, provided fleeting sparks of hope before dissolving into expensive, unproductive dead ends. A brief consultation with a renowned parapsychologist offered no tangible answers, only further esoteric speculation. Fueled by online theories, Emily even organized several amateur search expeditions in the years following, venturing off established trails with maps and theories gleaned from forums, always returning with nothing but exhaustion and a renewed sense of frustration. These personal bests, while poem of love and refusal to surrender, often blurred the line of safety and legality, and the emotional toll of each failed attempt was immense, further isolating Emily and straining the fragile beat that her family had so desperately sought them into amidst their unending loss. Over the decades, the legend of the vanished couple became woven into the very fabric of the Mount Rainier region. The particular spur near where they were last seen was informally dubbed Jenkins-Miller Trail, a morbid landmark in local folklore. Patrols occasionally revisited the case files. New technologies like advanced forensic imaging and DNA analysis periodically applied to the original evidence, yielding intriguing possibilities, but no concrete breakthroughs. The story of Sarah and David, once a local tragedy, evolved into an enduring regional mystery, a poignant reminder of the wilderness' power to both inspire and conceal. The mountain, once a symbol of their shared dreams, had become a silent, stoic witness to a truth that remained tantalizingly out of reach, leading many to believe that their story, like so many others swallowed by the vastness, would remain an eternal question mark, perpetually waiting to be unearthed. The feeling persisted that their case, so long dormant, was on the cusp of being irrevocably defined, either by definitive proof of a tragic end or by a shocking revelation that would shatter the decades of quiet despair. The summer of 2025 was typically serene in the foothills of Mount Rainier, but for Mark Riley, a graduate student in geology, the beauty of the landscape held an academic purpose. On a sweltering July afternoon, he was undertaking advanced surveying near a seldom-visited ravine, a geological anomaly noted on his expedition map. His trowel scraped against something unyielding beneath the packed earth, not rock, but metal. Brushing away the soil with a practiced motion, he uncovered a small, tarnished box. It seemed surprisingly intact despite the apparent age. The air, usually filled with the scent of pine, seemed to momentarily thicken with an unspoken presence. With a jolt of curiosity, he pried it open. The faint click echoed in the stillness, immediately followed by a wave of icy dread that had nothing to do with the mountain's cool embrace. It was the absolute, terrifying silence that followed the unsealing, a silence that screamed of a secret long buried. Nestled within the protective confines of the weathered metal box lay a collection of artifacts that seemed to hum with a forgotten past. Sarah Jenkins' locket, a delicate silver heart, lay tarnished but whole, its tiny clasp holding a faded, sepia-toned photograph of a smiling Sarah and a serious-looking David. Beside it rested a small, leather-bound journal, its pages brittle with age, the meticulous script of Sarah Jenkins still legible beneath a fine layer of dust. The final entries were a chilling testament to their final hours. Tucked beneath the journal was David Miller's wallet, its worn leather scuffed, the plastic identification window remarkably clear, confirming his identity. The pristine preservation of these items, seemingly shielded from the elements within their earthen tomb, was itself a disturbing anomaly. It suggested a deliberate act, a careful concealment, a meticulous erasure, rather than the random scattering of a fatal accident. The starkness of their discovery, the sheer improbability of these personal anchors surviving 39 years untouched, sent a shiver down Mark's spine, hinting at a horror far more profound than a simple fall. Mark, his hands trembling, carefully documented his find with his phone camera before securing the box and its contents. He immediately contacted the local sheriff's department, his voice tight with a mixture of professional urgency and sheer disbelief. Within the hour, 2 deputies arrived, their initial demeanor one of routine response quickly shifting to grave concern as Mark explained his findings and the precise location. They cordoned off the area, recognizing the sensitivity of the site and the potential link to a notorious cold case. Specialized forensic teams were summoned from the state park rangers and, soon after, the FBI, their presence a stark indicator of the newfound significance of the discovery. Preliminary verification of the items began at a makeshift forensic tent set up near the ravine, cross-referencing the locket's photograph and the wallet's ID with historical missing person files. The quiet confirmation from the state's lead forensic analyst, delivered in hushed tones, reverberated through the tent's atmosphere. The items unequivocally belonged to Sarah Jenkins and David Miller, lost on Mount Rainier in 1986. News of the discovery broke like a thunderclap, immediately triggering an emergency meeting at the Washington State Sheriff's Department and the regional FBI field office. Decades-old case files for Sarah Jenkins and David Miller were unceremoniously pulled from inactive storage, their pages brittle and yellowed, a stark reminder of the long dormancy. The discovery of tangible proof of their fate, particularly the contents of Sarah's journal detailing an apparent flight from pursuit rather than a simple accident, fundamentally altered the understanding of their disappearance. The FBI, recognizing the potential for a violent crime, officially reactivated the investigation, allocating significant resources and assigning a seasoned cold case unit. The methodical process of analyzing Sarah's journal for latent prints, DNA, and microscopic trace evidence, alongside the examination of David's wallet and the metal box itself, became the immediate priority. This was no longer a story of lost hikers. It was a crime scene, unearthed from its 39-year slumber, demanding a comprehensive and potentially dangerous inquiry. The news reached Emily Jenkins, now in her late 50s, like a jolt from a distant past. The official call, delivered with professional empathy, offered her a glimmer of hope intertwined with the terrifying specter of renewed trauma. The communities surrounding Mount Rainier, long acquainted with the legend of the vanished couple, were abuzz with a mixture of shock and morbid fascination. The quiet unease that had permeated the local lore was now replaced by a palpable sense of dread as the implications of Sarah's journal began to surface. Whispers of organized crime, of ruthless individuals operating beyond the reach of the law, started to circulate. The discovery of an of not urging and disregulation, but rather the problem of farmer discerned that one veteran in the to nearly 4 days, waiting for this precise moment to brave the unforgiving earth instead of a piece of identity or remark of Sarah and David's fate. The discovery of the metal box on Mount Rainier, a tangible link to a 39-year-old silence, immediately triggered an emergency mobilization. Agent Sterling, a veteran with a reputation for cracking intractable cold cases, convened a task force at the FBI's Seattle field office. The room, usually humming with the low thrum of ongoing investigations, now crackled with a renewed, almost desperate energy. Top forensic specialists, geologists, and digital reconstruction experts were pulled from other assignments. The meticulous, almost surgical approach to the case began, not with assumptions, but with the cold, hard facts unearthed from the earth. Modern technology, a stark contrast to the limited resources of 1986, was deployed with a singular purpose: to reconstruct Sarah Jenkins and David Miller's final hours, turning speculation into certainty. Every old file, every witness statement, every piece of evidence from the single lost booth to the newly discovered cache was fed into sophisticated, analytical systems, creating a comprehensive digital mosaic of a tragedy long buried. This was no longer an investigation, it was a resurrection. In the sterile environment of the FBI's crime lab, the contents of the metal box underwent an exhaustive examination. Sarah's journal, painstakingly conserved and digitized, revealed more than just cryptic entries. Ultraviolet light analysis picked up faint impressions on the journal's cover, a negative of a rifle's stock, a specific, ornate pattern that matched antique firearms often favored by poachers. DNA swabbing of the locket, journal, and wallet yielded touch DNA not belonging to Sarah or David, confirming the presence of an unknown third party. Peter Vance, the lead forensic analyst, focused on the temporal data etched into the items themselves. Microscopic wear patterns on the locket's clasp suggested it had been forcibly opened. Furthermore, soil samples found within the box were analyzed, showing a unique mineral composition matching a specific, secluded ravine, the very location of discovery, miles from the documented trails. Trace analysis on the wallet revealed a faint, almost imperceptible residue of animal pelts, tying it to the region's illegal hunting activities. The meticulous preservation suggested the items were deliberately sealed away, a grim testament to an intent to erase, not merely abandon. With the forensic groundwork laid, the investigation shifted to connecting historical clues. Investigators pored over decades-old park logs, witness interviews, and stray reports from the 1986 period. A seemingly insignificant detail mentioned by a park ranger of unusual vehicle tracks spotted on old logging roads far from public access points in early October 1986 suddenly gained profound importance. Cross-referencing these tracks with Sarah's journal entries about being followed led to a chilling hypothesis: Sarah and David hadn't been lost, they had been pursued. Old reports detailing unresolved disappearances and suspected poaching activity in the very same remote sectors of the park during that era were re-examined. Sterling's team identified a pattern. Individuals who reported illegal hunting activities in the park often vanished shortly after. The antique rifle stock impression from the journal's cover became the linchpin. It matched a highly prized, custom-made rifle known to have been carried by a particularly notorious poacher, a man named Silas Croft, who operated in the Cascades during the late 80s and was suspected in numerous violent encounters, all of which remained officially unsolved due to lack of evidence. The mounting evidence began to paint a grim, cohesive picture. Sarah Jenkins and David Miller, experienced and prepared as they were, had likely stumbled upon Silas Croft's illegal hunting operation. Their meticulous snow-taking and exploration of less trafficked areas led them directly into his path. Croft, notorious for his brutal methods and his resolve to eliminate any witnesses, saw them as a threat. Sarah's journal entries detailed their panicked attempts to evade him, using their knowledge of the terrain to their advantage. The single boot found miles off trail was not a result of a fall, but likely an accidental shedding during a desperate chase. Croft, likely a skilled woodsman, had then systematically pursued them, cornering them and, as the DNA impelled suggested, taking their lives. He had meticulously gathered their personal effects, Sarah's locket, journal, and David's wallet, and buried them in the remote ravine, a deliberate act of concealment designed to suggest a natural disappearance, an erasure of their existence that mirrored the permanent silencing of potential witnesses he executed so ruthlessly. Now, the FBI possessed a definitive direction. The cold case was no longer a mystery of misadventure. It was a homicide investigation into Silas Croft, a man believed to be in his late 70s or early 80s, living a quiet life somewhere in the Pacific Northwest. While Croft himself might be beyond immediate reach, the established facts concerning his past crimes, now solidifying around the deaths of Sarah and David, offered a chance for justice. Sterling's team coordinated with local and state law enforcement agencies, developing a strategy to locate Croft and corroborate the evidence with further forensic examination of his known past residences and any remaining associates. The years of unanswered questions were coalescing into undeniable proof of a monstrous crime. The coming days would focus on preparation, assembling irrefutable evidence for potential prosecution, locating any remaining crucial evidence in Croft's possession, and most importantly, preparing to deliver the devastating, yet ultimately clarifying truth to the families who had waited nearly 4 decades for answers. The mountain had finally yielded its secret. Agent Sterling stood before Silas Croft, his aged, weathered face a mask of practiced indifference, the faintest tremor betraying decades of ingrained violence. The FBI's evidence, the indelible imprint of Croft's antique rifle on Sarah's journal, the unique mineral composition of the soil in the metal patches of secluded hunting grounds, the DNA present on Sarah's locket and David's wallet, and Sarah's own desperate scribblings of being pursued by a formidable, unknown hunter was irrefutable. Croft offered no confession, no plea, only a chilling silence that had once been his shield. The arrest, conducted with quiet efficiency in a remote cabin nestled deep in the Cascades, marked not just the end of a manhunt that spanned nearly 4 decades, but the chilling confirmation of a meticulously planned erasure. The recovered items, painstakingly gathered by Croft from the ravine where he'd buried them, had finally spoken, linking him directly to the demise of Sarah Jenkins and David Miller. Their final moments, a desperate flight for survival, were now laid bare, the silence of their vanishing finally broken by the weight of undeniable truth. The mountain, for so long a keeper of secrets, had relinquished its hold. The news was delivered to Emily Jenkins and David's parents with a solemnity befitting its gravity. Agent Sterling, accompanied by their local liaison, met them in a quiet conference room, the old case files spread between them. Emily, her face etched with the enduring lines of nearly 40 years of unanswered questions, listened intently as Sterling recounted the meticulous forensic findings and Croft's eventual apprehension. The relief was palpable, a fragile bloom pushing through hardened soil, yet it was tinged with a profound, heartbreaking horror. David's parents grasped each other's hands tightly, their stoic grief momentarily cracking as they absorbed the details of their son's final struggle. For Emily, knowing Sarah wasn't simply lost but fought to the very end, provided a difficult, yet crucial, solace. The anguish of their loss remained a testament to the love they shared, but the gnawing uncertainty, the phantom of what might have happened, had finally been confronted with a concrete, albeit brutal, reality. Silas Croft's trial was a stark, somber affair. The courtroom a tense arena where the ghosts of 1986 were resurrected through forensic evidence and Sarah's harrowing journal entries. The prosecution meticulously laid out the timeline of pursuit and evasion, presenting the metal box and its contents as the irrefutable anchors of truth. Croft, a man who had built his life on the silence of the wilderness and the unseen cruelty of men, was ultimately convicted on multiple counts, including second-degree murder and illegal evidence concealment. His sentencing, a lifetime in prison, brought a measure of legal justice to the families, a formal acknowledgement of the unspeakable acts committed. The case prompted a national review of cold case investigation protocols, highlighting the critical role of evolving forensic technology and the importance of re-examining seemingly unsolvable disappearances with fresh eyes and advanced analytical tools. Mount Rainier National Park, in cooperation with the state, established new safety measures for remote trail exploration and dedicated funds for the ongoing documentation and study of cold cases linked to national park lands, ensuring that future adventurers might be better protected. In the years that followed, the memory of Sarah Jenkins and David Miller became more than just a tragic story. Their shared passion for the natural world, tragically cut short, inspired the creation of the Jenkins-Miller Conservation Fund, dedicated to protecting pristine alpine ecosystems and establishing educational programs for young biologists and architects. Emily, her voice now a steady beacon of advocacy, worked tirelessly to raise awareness about the importance of diligent investigation and the devastating impact of unresolved loss. The annual memorial hike on Mount Rainier continued, a solemn gathering of family and friends, but it had transformed from a vigil of grief into a celebration of lives lived with purpose and courage. The discovery of the notebooks, a tangible link to buried injustice, had not only uncovered the truth of Sarah and David's fate, but that also had left a movement, a reminder that even in the face of immense left overwhelming silence, the search for truth, however arduous, is always a journey worth undertaking. The story of Sarah Jenkins and David Miller, of their love, their courage, and their tragic encounter with a darkness hidden within the wild, serves as a profound testament to the enduring power of truth. It teaches us that no secret is truly buried forever, that the human spirit's capacity for both great love and profound cruelty can be laid bare by time and circumstance. It underscores the vital importance of perseverance, of never ceasing to search for answers, for those lost to us and for the justice that may still be found. In remembering Sarah and David, we are reminded of our collective responsibility to protect the vulnerable, to honor the memory of those who seek beauty and knowledge, and to ensure that every voice, silenced too soon, eventually finds its echo in the pursuit of a more just and compassionate world. If you found this story compelling and believe in the importance of uncovering truth, please subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss our next investigation. Your support fuels our mission to bring closure to forgotten mysteries.